Welcome to the Station Podcast with Rachel Bowman and Michelle Wheelis.
Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Station Podcast. We are actually back here again with Pete and Rachel because after our last episode, we felt like there was so much more that there was to share on their vision now for the station. Yeah, and just so much more that their hearts burn for. So, Rachel, do you want to do a quick recap of what we covered in the first episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the station this year on the podcast, we're covering what it looks like to be a vision carrier of the Lord, because we believe God drops vision into each and every person's heart. And we need to seek God to find out what those visions are. And in the last episode, we talked about what the main vision is for those of us that believe in Jesus. God has a great commission, which is make disciples of all nations. And he has a great commandment to love him with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love others as we love ourselves. And so every vision that God drops in our heart comes out of that big vision that God has for each of us on this globe, to love him, love others, and make disciples of all nations. So we talked about that in episode 1. And we also talked about how to discover vision for our lives. And it's very connected to how God saved you. What did he save you from? And when he saved you, what did freedom look like in your life? And what did you gain authority in? Through Jesus, not your own power, but God's empowerment in you, what did you gain authority in that you can go show others and lead others to Jesus so they can have freedom and gain authority in their lives too? And so we talked about that being a step forward in discovering vision for your lives. And Pete and I talked a lot about how we carried vision because we're vision carriers. And we introduced Pete on the last episode too. Pete is my husband. And how we actually started a camp back in 2008. And so we recapped what that was like to carry vision back then and discover what it was to be a vision carrier in the boot camp that we lived in during those 10 years that we ran the youth camp up in Mammoth Lakes, California. But now we are carrying a new vision. And so we felt that we needed to dive into what it looks like today to be vision carriers in this new season, because we are connected to God's vision, making disciples of all nations, loving people, loving Jesus. In each season, God actually drops new vision in our life, right? Or he kind of tweaks it a little bit, the visions that he gives us. And so we are carrying the station vision in a new way now. And so we thought we should share with you guys this season and what it looks like for us to be vision carriers now.
Wonderful. What your hearts burn for has always been the young generation. Yeah. Correct?
Yes.
So after 27 years of youth and young adult ministry, neither of you has given up on the young generation. Why is that?
Yeah. In the last episode, Pete actually mentioned that we shouldn't go after vision that our heart doesn't burn for. Mm-hmm. And with the young generation, we haven't given up because it's very connected to how Pete and I were saved as young adults. And it's very connected to how God set us free from in our testimonies. And I'm not going to go into our testimonies right now, and so right there, a fire was ignited in my heart, a fire was ignited in his heart. And I'll let him share in a second about his heart and what it burns for the young generation. But along the way, we haven't given up because we consistently remind ourselves where God saved us and what he saved us from when we were young in our 20s. And for me, there are times that I have to remind myself of that. But I also think the other part of it is because we've been working with youth and young adults for over 27 years now, we have watched what the young generation deals with. And the Lord consistently, I know for myself, I'll let Pete speak for himself, God breaks my heart for the young generation. I've seen all different themes happen in people's lives. I mean, I would say this current theme now is anxiety and what people deal with. And so for me, just seeing what people in their lives breaks my heart for them. And I want to see them connect to God's freedom for them, because I know what it's like to be free and healed, even from anxiety myself. And I know what it's like to live in that freedom. And I just want everyone to know there's freedom. There's so much hope for their future. And so I just keep reconnecting to that in my heart, and connecting to God's heart too for the young generation, spending a lot of time praying and spending time in God's presence, so that I won't give up, so that I will keep the fire burning to reach the young generation for Jesus. Yeah.
I think that, as Rachel was talking, I was just thinking about how do we not give up? And sometimes that's a little bit different than just your heart burning. There's also a side of it that says, how do you have proper boundaries? So, I mean, if you think about it, as your heart burns for people and you want to see them set free, does that mean you carry it? And I think there's a big thing here is around, what is God calling you to carry? Or did he call you to fix them, or are you the great fixer? Or is that, I don't think that's our role, right? And so I think that in order for Rachel and I, we'll tell you that we probably started that way. Yeah. And we really wanted to save everyone, and we didn't have really solid boundaries, but we had to learn over our years, in how do we have proper boundaries? So, because if you don't have the proper boundaries, you will get burned out, you will give up, you will have these things. So I would say that in order for us to do what we're doing today, we had to learn, where did our boundaries come from? How do we do it correctly? How do we, do it with the Lord, and make sure that we're not burning ourselves out, or not taking care of, our kids, or we're not taking care of, well, they're not kids anymore, but when they were young, but when they were younger, we had to do it too. So it's like, how do you kind of layer all that together so you know how to carry it well?
Yeah. I agree with you. And we have stories of our younger years of youth ministry when we just volunteered at our church, and we just made ourselves available, really 24/7 to all these young people, because we didn't want to let them down. And I think for us, over time, we were getting weary and tired. And I love how God, during that decade that we ran the camp, he taught us these healthy boundaries that we have brought into today. And it works so well today. We are really strategic with our time and managing our time, and how much time we spend with people, and then how much time we get our souls restored by the Lord. So I think that also helps us not give up. Yeah.
So today, how do each of you kind of carry your own parts of the vision with your own specific giftings?
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
You go ahead.
You sure? Okay. For me, I know for Pete and I, and he mentioned this in episode 1 too, is understanding our lanes within the ministry.
I really liked that part of episode 1. You guys should go back and watch it.
Yeah, definitely go back and watch it. Yeah, because understanding our lanes, it took a while. I mean, we're married, and so we had to figure out, what is the gifts I carry, what are the gifts he carries, what are things I'll be responsible for and he'll be responsible for, and how can we operate the most effectively in the gifts God's given us. And I know for me, I do the bulk of the mentorship now, because now, I mean, you see on the sign, Raising Foundations, Releasing Dreams. The Raising Foundations part is a lot of sitting with people one-on-one and doing mentorship. And mentorship, I've mentioned this before, is I see it as a gold thread that weaves its way through everything we do at the station, from mentorship meetings with individuals, mentorship meetings with nonprofit leaders and their teams, and also the camps we run in the summer that people we mentor actually go to those camps. And it's always this focus on mentorship, which truly is discipleship. And I would say that for me, I take the bulk of that on because I have the space and the time, but I've also been developing a curriculum over time too that really speaks to people having healing in their life foundations. And for Pete and I, he, like, for me, like, the ministry side is what my heart burns for in mentorship. And what I see with him is, like, he can see structurally in the background how the organization should be organized. And even he's been mentioning to me recently framework, like the framework of the organization as a nonprofit as a whole. And then it's so beautiful because, like, I come to, this is another gift, I believe, from the Lord. Like, as a teacher, I have a gift of teaching. So that really applies to the mentorship. And I think for Pete, when he comes alongside people, he actually sees the gold in people to call them higher into, he already sees them as God has called them to be and how God has made them to be, even if they don't see it themselves. And so for me, like when I'm focusing in on the mentorship piece, it's more teaching people, like diving into like their core values and things like that, where when Pete joins me in mentorship meetings, he will call out the gold in people. But I would say that both of us bring to the table just this beautiful ability to complement one another with different perspective. And so for him, logic, and then for me on the emotional side, together it blends really well too. So I would say that, yeah, my main lane would be mentorship. And then obviously the camps too, an organization of camps. That's my lane a lot right now too, where he comes to camp, but he gets to show up and it's all planned and everything because I'm a planner. So, and then you have more lanes in it too that you may want to speak to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know that the lanes are as important as like just kind of sitting back, and I look at it from a point of view of like, what are the lies that they're believing in that, and then really going to go after that, where, you know, I think Rachel's more setting the foundations and will deal with the healing side of that. Sometimes I will come in and be a bit more, I don't want to call it aggressive, but it would be assertive. Yes, it would be the right term that I was looking for. And so it'd be like, why do you believe that lie? What is going on? How does that happen? How can you break that lie? And then really kind of sometimes would leave that to Rachel then to say, okay, well, how do we can uncover that? And that could take 5 sessions, but it would be, you know, me, I just kind of look at things through a different lens. And whether that's with in mentorship, or whether that's looking at it from our organizational perspective or a framework perspective, I'm always looking from that kind of a lens of saying, well, what could it look like? How could it be? What is the vision that God's given you to carry? And honestly, I don't know that I don't have a small vision. Mm-hmm. It's always a big vision. And so it's always going to be calling, hey, I think you could dream bigger. Like, how do you dream bigger with God? Why did you accept that? And so it's really kind of the same, no matter where it is, it's the same thing. It's just right. Like, what is God calling you to? What are you capable of? And how are you going to really, how do you have the mission and the vision to go forward with and carry it even?
Yeah. I think Pete's really good at helping people not settle for less than who they are in the Lord. And so he brings that to the table. And Pete works a full-time job. You know, the nonprofit world, we're carrying a vision for a nonprofit ministry. Well, we have to eat and we have to be able to live financially. And so that's why I mentioned, like, I do the bulk of the mentorship meetings, but he jumps in consistently, like, especially when there's young men that we mentor together and young couples, and then also the ministry leaders and their teams. Pete brings so much to the table that I just can't even speak to from the business perspective, because there is that side too, and how to actually have sustainable organizations and how to steward things well within the organization. Yeah, you speak to that too, which is so great.
What are some of the obstacles that you're facing as you carry this new vision for the station?
Yeah. You know, there's always obstacles when you are doing ministry for the Lord. When you're sharing the gospel, when you're trying to make disciples of all nations, you're going to face obstacles. It's like you cannot get around them. Like, you have to be ready for that when you're carrying vision. And I would say the obstacles that we face, there's a lot, but I actually have 3 that I wrote down. The first one is lies that are also very attached to distractions. There's always something going after your time to distract you. And the enemy, because we do have an enemy out there, doesn't want us to stay focused on the vision that God's given us. And so the enemy will feed us so many lies, saying that these other things out there are so much more important than what I'm doing here in this space. And also, there's these lies too from the enemy that tell us, oh, we're not doing a good enough job. And there's also lies that I know for me that I've had to really come against that said the station will not go forward, that there won't be enough provision going forward. And so I've just come against like all these lies, and that has been like a huge obstacle for me personally. And then fighting for the truth, which I'll speak to in the next question, what the truth is to combat those lies of the enemy and the distractions that he puts in our way. But the two other areas that I wrote down was weariness. You know, your soul gets tired when you're doing ministry, and we need to get restored. And the only one who could do that is the Lord. And I know it gets weary when I am like even mentoring or coming alongside people, and I don't see a lot of positive change in their life. And I also get weary when I just see even our organization, the station, not being able to grow because of lack of resources. And so that would be the third obstacle, would be a lack of resources. It's really hard to carry a vision when you don't have all the resources that you need to carry it forward financially, or not enough staff members. And it just can be really, really hard and really, really tiring, because as a founder of a nonprofit, a vision carrier, you often feel quite alone in the process. And that has been a consistent theme for me in the weariness and also the lack of resources, is me feeling very alone in carrying the vision, because there's been incredible teams along the way. But in this new vision, it hasn't. I mean, Michelle, you've been tremendous. Michelle is really the team. We've had a social media manager, which we love, Jalen, but otherwise we really haven't been able to afford a team of people to help carry the vision with us. And so I'll just name those three obstacles again: lies, which connects us to distraction, and then weariness in our soul, weariness of just not seeing a lot of change in people, but then weariness of lack of resources. And that's the third obstacle, is lack of resources. When you run a nonprofit ministry, it can be really hard. Yeah. So I don't know if there's other obstacles that you think we face now with carrying this new vision for the station.
I mean, I really think those are the top three ones that I would agree with. And I think there's so much that can fit under those, so it's not, there's not really ones that we need to add to it. I think those are really the three major obstacles for us right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And how do you both keep the burning in your hearts and not give up in the process of carrying this vision? So in the midst of these three obstacles, how would you combat that?
Yeah. I know for me with the lies, I have to consistently remind myself of God's truth. I mean, obviously the Bible helps. Like, I pick certain scriptures, like just practically, like I'll pick one or two scriptures for months that I will focus in on, that I know are truth, that combat some of the lies that the enemy's feeding me, and more time with God. I always tell young people the key to everything is the presence of the Lord. And I've probably said that in many of our podcast episodes in the last couple seasons, but I carve out a lot more time in the presence of God and get really quiet. And that's where my soul gets restored too, from the weariness that I mentioned. The second, obstacle was weariness. So we got lies, we got weariness, but I go to God's truth, which is the Bible, and then I go to his presence. And I really dive in every day. Like, this is like not even an option. Like, every day I'm in God's words of truth and his presence. And then I also, with the third obstacle, as far as resources, as I am taking time in his words of truth and his presence, I'm reminding myself, and it's so hard because you have to trust God that he's the provider. That the truth is, the vision I'm carrying is God's vision. This ministry called The Station is God's ministry, not mine. And I have to consistently surrender it back to the hands of God, like laying it at his feet and just saying, Jesus, this is your ministry. This is your vision. This is your plan. And I just submit to God's leadership in my life. And I know that the Bible says that the Lord restores our souls. And so for me, just his presence, his words of truth, and then surrender, those three things help me combat the obstacles that we face. And when it comes to those resources, which a lot of it is lack of finances for the station, truly, I always remind myself, this will be the last thing I speak to this, is what are we really doing? What are our hearts really burning for? People to know Jesus and to really know how much he loves them and the hope he has for their future. People to really accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And honestly, you can do that without any money. You can do that without any money. I can sit across from a young adult, which I do 5 days a week, at a coffee shop, and the only money I need is to buy a coffee for that person and me. And when it comes to the camps and when it comes to all those other things that cost money to keep a nonprofit going, paying staff members and having us grow with our mentorship curriculum, I just have to lay those parts of the vision at God's feet. And I'll be like, well, Jesus, if it's on your heart, then you will provide financially for those things. And I just keep it. I just go back to the basics of what I'm really called to do here. Yeah, with the vision and carrying it.
You know, the thing that I kind of think about a little bit is there are lies, but there's also those fears. And those, it says in a lot of Psalms, like, if you fear the Lord, you'll have no fears. Well, that's really easy to say, but maybe not always easy to live out, right? Yeah. So do you have a fear of failure? Do you have the fear of, maybe not being perfect? Do you have the fear of, what if you said the wrong thing and you hurt somebody? And there's so many fears that you could almost be debilitating from. And I don't think that, I don't really have that problem as much as debilitating, but it's more around, do you let those fears consume you, or are you going to let those fears, are you going to fear the Lord and know that he has that and it's in his hands and that you're just doing your best and you're going to show up the best possible version of yourself while you're there? And are you willing to actually even confront your fears and put them aside? And so I think that, why we talk about lies, I think those lies are fears and they're very hand in hand. But I think the fear side of things becomes an extremely important thing as you're kind of saying, well, how do I carry a vision? Well, you have to make sure you're doing the work with the Lord, to putting the armor of God on and not allowing those fears to overcome you.
Yeah.
I know I struggle a lot sometimes with like the little thought or a little lie that like sneaks its way in, and then it's just so easy to dwell on it and immediately start spiraling. And so it is really important to have like the base of like scripture to help yourself get out of that, and even just submitting like your fear to the Lord as well. And like truly being like, I'm going to fear you over all else. It is really important. I'm not perfect at it, but
I think when you really think about it, though, Michelle, is like if you kind of step back and go, what does that really mean? If I fear the Lord, is that just a reverent fear, or is it really saying that what's the worst that can happen in our life?
Right.
And I think that's sometimes so like we're not really always focused on that. Like, is the worst that we die and we go to heaven? Well, if that's your greatest fear is death, and it hasn't where death already been overcome. So what is the fear? Like, I think that's like when you really think about like, why do we have the fears? I actually can't. Sometimes I don't know why I have them. Like, I'm like, why do I have fears? Like, if we're only supposed to fear the Lord, I'm like, well, then why can't I just live in that scripture so easily? But it's I think it's a difficult thing.
It is. I actually had a moment a couple weeks ago where I was in the midst of like a fear spiral type thing, and I was trying to like figure out life and what I was going to do, and I was sitting there and I just had a thought, and this is not biblical, so I'm not even going to say that it is, but I was just like, it's just life. And like it almost helped me zoom out of like, this is just life. Like, we get eternity with God.
That's right.
How can this be this stressful? And it was so grounding. Even though I'm like, I mean, maybe it is in the Bible somewhere, but it is just kind of like, okay, it's just life. Like, sure, I might make a mistake or I might fail, but the end goal is to end up in eternity. And as long as I'm walking with the Lord, that's what's going to happen. And so it's a very grounding feeling.
It is grounding. Because, I mean, we go under warfare. I mean, that is, I know, a Christianese word, but there's spiritual warfare. And when you're carrying vision of the Lord to see people know Jesus and share the gospel and make disciples, we're going to be under warfare, and the enemy wants to plant the fear. And then we have this mighty God who comes and he abolishes fear with his perfect love. And he takes us back to simplicity of
Yeah.
what really matters, exactly like what you're just saying, Michelle.
Yeah.
Like, this is life, but it's not eternity. Eternity is our hope with Jesus forever
Yeah.
in a place where there will be no fear. Yeah. Isn't that
Yeah,
cool to
it
think
is.
about? Yeah.
I don't even know how to transition in here, but we're going to move on to the next question.
Sure.
How can people discover the burning in their hearts that connects each of them to a vision that the Lord wants them to carry?
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how my heart burns for a young generation to have their foundations raised and their dreams released on earth. That's the new vision statement.
I don't know if they can see.
Yeah, I don't know
I
if
can now see.
on the sign here, raising foundations, releasing dreams in a young generation. And you know what I thought about? I thought about, what do I feel inside when I even say our vision statement, raising foundations, releasing dreams in a young generation? There is something in my heart that lights up. There is something in my heart that gets so passionate for every individual young person on earth to connect to the fact that God wants to bring healing to their life foundations from past trauma, from circumstances, disappointments, whatever put the cracks in their life foundation, to see them step into great purpose, the dreams that God has dropped into their heart. Like, I get so excited about it that I can just talk about it so much. And I think that helps people discover the vision in their hearts when your heart just lights up when you talk about a people group, an industry that you would love to be a part of, because you just want them to know God's truth and who he is and how he sees them and how much he loves them and how there's hope in Jesus. Like, when you think about the people that you want to experience the love of God, and your heart just like lights up, then there's a vision somewhere in there with that people group or that industry. I think of the film industry, for instance, because I have a friend, hi Lauren, if you're out there listening, who has a heart for the film industry. And so it's just like her heart lights up. And I just know, and I've seen different people where their heart lights up. It could be even like we work with skiers and snowboarders for Christ. Their heart lights up when they get to go snowboard on the mountain and also share the love of God with people on the mountain across the globe, because they're SFC International. I'm just shout out to you guys too. No, but it's true. And I just think that's you got to look and see where your heart lights up. Where does the passion ignite? Yeah. You have any ideas?
I think we talked about it in the last episode a little bit, which was around where did you have breakthrough, and that the areas that you have breakthrough are also areas where I think that you have some authority in, and then also you're gonna then say, when you have that authority, where do you want to see that to bring freedom and God's freedom and love into those same situations? So I really think it's really tied to what have you gone through in your life, what are the areas that God has set you free, and then from those areas, how are you going to bring others to the same level of freedom that God has brought you in? And we're always in process, so it doesn't mean you have to have arrived in order to do it. So we have to be really careful in our words here, but it's saying, hey, if you're in that process, know that you have the ability to be called to that people group, wherever that may be, and to bring freedom. Because I think it's about bringing, I think, the hope and the freedom, and those go hand in hand in the love that God has for you.
Yeah, I think of you because, we won't dive into your whole testimony in this episode, maybe in another episode sometime, but you were, inducted into a cult at 14 years old. And then you got set free from the cult by the Lord and people helping you when you were around 20 years old. And for you, I know, today, your heart burns to see people know their identity. And we talked about that in the first part, in the last episode of Vision Carriers, because you really want people to know who they are and how God sees them and how to operate out of the identity of a son or a daughter of King Jesus. And because you got set free and you knew that when you were 14, you did not know your identity. And if you were strong in who God had created you to be as a 14-year-old, and most 14-year-olds aren't, right? Because we're young at that age, but your heart burns to really lead people to who they are and their identity in Jesus. And you were set free, and you know what it's like to discover your identity. Even though I think we're always discovering more of who we are in Jesus. But so that's been really cool for me to watch. And so I think that is just an example of, how people can discover, something that their heart burns for. Yeah, it could be you wanting to see people really know their identity, Yeah.
I know we talked a little about obstacles already, but what do you think our listeners can do to overcome obstacles as they carry vision?
Yeah, I've been thinking about Nehemiah in the Bible, and he is a great example. If you are thinking about being a vision carrier and you really feel stirred in your heart that God has given you a vision, definitely go read the book of Nehemiah in the Bible, because he is a great example of overcoming obstacles. And there's 3 things he did so well, and it speaks to it throughout the book of Nehemiah, is he was consistent in prayer. He was consistent in being in the presence of God, just as I've mentioned for myself that I do. And then he fasted. He actually fasted. And the Bible talks a lot about fasting. And I know it's probably not one of our favorite things as Christians is to fast food, but Nehemiah did. And there's other things to fast, like social media. It could be a variety of things that you fast what God puts on your heart. But those 3 things Nehemiah did. And he faced a lot of obstacles. He faced enemies that were trying to kill him, people that were trying to distract him. He faced the weariness, too, of all the people around him and himself. And he just consistently, he would pray. There was one point in the book of Nehemiah where it talks about he just, in a middle of a conversation, he just started praying. It was just like his go-to was Jesus. His go-to was Jesus. We have to understand when we carry vision that we are not carrying it alone. It is actually so important to hold the vision so loose before God and let him show us how to carry it. But the truth is he's the one really carrying it. So we need to be so surrendered to God too. And I think that will help overcome a lot of these obstacles that come your way, because it's really gaining God's wisdom and perspective when you're praying, when you're spending time in his presence. And when you fast, it's like a refocus and a reset for your life. And it sets your face focusing on the face of Jesus. And so that's what I would suggest for overcoming obstacles along the way, for sure. Oh, one last thing that I did forget. Don't stay in it alone. Yes, like I mentioned, you have Jesus, but there's other people. There are other people around you that can be a support system through the process of, as you're hitting obstacles within the ministry that you may have started, or the nonprofit organization, or you're carrying a vision of being a teacher, or you're starting a business. Like, put people around you that can actually speak truth to you and also carry wisdom themselves, that they can pour out wisdom to you. And go to other people that are carrying vision, that have carried vision before you, and learn from them. Yeah, and I think I mentioned that in the last episode too, because that's just so, so important that we don't stay isolated in it as we're facing all these obstacles, because it will cause so much weariness if we're trying to do it by ourselves. Yeah.
I mean, probably not a shocker for you, but I would say that it's going to come back to me for identity. So it's like, imagine, again, Nehemiah going before the king to get the money to build the wall or to take the workers. And it's like, you better know why you're called, what you're doing, who God's called you to be, and you better know who you're doing the work for.
Yeah.
And I think that so often we can get distracted. I mean, and I think that when you look at the Nehemiah, I was like, can we distract him, like Rachel said? But it's also, you can't distract somebody if you know what your calling is. Yeah. Right. And I think that it has to come, and that, what does that come back to? Well, you better know that the Almighty called you, right? Yeah. And there was a mission and a vision, and there's a plan, and that plan cannot be, you can't just say, oh, look at that shiny object over there, let's go look at that. And I think I wanted to build a gate instead, or I wanted to build a bigger wall, or I want to build, a moat now. And well, what is that? What you were supposed to build? I mean, it's like, I think you have to really kind of be specific. And then really, I think what I've learned is you have to not only get to be specific, but then you have to have the plan, back to framework, to say, what is the one thing I want to get done first, and then what's the one after that, and then really look at it from a stepping stone. I think so often we could just be, maybe our hearts are burning so much that, and we have, and the harvest is is so big, right? What's that verse? The harvest is.
Oh, the workers are few.
Yeah.
The harvest. What is that scripture? Oh, no. Okay.
What I was going to say is that you can be so overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you want to accomplish and what your heart and what your heart is so burning or hurts for, even for this people group, that you can like say, I just want to do it all. Well, that's not really the right way to do it. I mean, if one of the things Rachel and I would always say to each other is that if we just love the one in front of us, isn't that one just enough? Like, where did numbers ever come into this? And like, how did we become maybe it's the Western civilization that it's all about numbers. I don't think it's about numbers. I think it's about loving so well, and it could just be one person is worth it.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that would be my thing, would be just stay focused on the steps and don't get overwhelmed by
how many steps.
Yeah. I tell people in mentorship, I say, take one day at a time, one step at a time. And it's such an easy statement to remember. One day at a time, one step at a time. So I think that in overcoming obstacles that you face as you're trying to carry this vision, it's like, well, Jesus, what did you call me to do just today? Yeah. And I also think that we need to connect to a kingdom mindset versus an earthly mindset. What is the vision of God's success versus this earth's success? In the world, it tells us we need to make a certain amount of money, or like you just mentioned, you need to have a certain number of people that you're reaching and tally up the numbers. And God just is like, he leaves the 99 to go after the one. One, talks about the good shepherd, which is Jesus going after the sheep. And I just really, for me, my perspective is always like, Lord God, it doesn't matter how many people we reach. It matters, honestly, how effective we are, and just that they come to know who God really is and how God sees them. And so I just think like it takes the pressure off when we're just honed in on what is Jesus saying about what am I doing today, and what does this one step look like today? It's so good.
I think one of the things I had kind of like a vision of, though, Michelle, was just like, because Rachel and I were in China, and we walked on the Great Wall of China, and like, you kind of think about the Great Wall of China, you can see it from space.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. Like, if we're going to build a wall, did you say, well, I'm going to go build a wall that's going to span 1,000 miles and it's impossible? Or did you just lay one brick at a time and have, granted, we're not going to get into how that got built, because that probably is not the best story around how that was built, but it's more around the kind of the analogy would be, you got to start somewhere. Right. They didn't start with 1,000 bricks, or they had 1,000 miles. Right. They did one section at a time, one step at a time. There's a framework, there's a way to do that, and then a really good, healthy rhythm with the Lord.
Yeah.
Well, I know we like to, when we end our podcast, we like to end with hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with the last question, I just want to ask, what are some things that our listeners can take with them today to connect to hope for the vision God has put in their hearts?
Yeah, I thought about this, and I really felt like for some of you out there, you're like, well, I have this vision, but I'm hopeless. It will never happen. And, it starts with the thoughts in your head, and you need to flip the bucket over of your brain and start thinking more positive, because all things are possible with God. When we started the camp back in 2008, we had no idea how it was going to happen. That dream got dropped in my heart as a 13-year-old. I had no money. I didn't know what I was going to do to start a camp. I just wanted to start a camp someday. And then fast forward to the last 3 years, when we relaunched the vision of the station into Raising Foundations, Releasing Dreams, all I knew was that God said mentorship, foundation, and retreat center. That there was going to be 3 phases of this vision, and we would start with the mentorship. We would just sit across from young adults and start pouring any wisdom God had given us into them so that they could carry vision well in their lives. And as far as this foundation, it hasn't happened yet. We don't have those resources at this point to actually resource people's other ministries, other nonprofits, as their dreams are released on earth. We don't have that yet. And we don't have a camp property. But we get to do camps in the summer. God's been providing. People have been donating their houses. We raise money as the best we can. And all I can say is you need to take a step forward in hope, believing that all things are possible with God, and that when he gives you a vision and he drops it in your heart, that you will trust that he will provide all you need. And our hope doesn't lie in the vision happening. Our hope lies in Jesus alone. It is in Jesus alone. And the vision should be connected, truly, if it's a God vision, to furthering his kingdom on earth, making disciples of all nations. So if he truly has dropped a vision in your heart, you need to trust that he will provide all you need. And if for some reason the door closes and that is not the right vision for you to carry, you better believe there will be a new one. There will be a new one. Like when our camp closed, there was this new vision. It took about 5 years before the new vision got dropped in our hearts that we are carrying today. April 30th, when this episode releases, will be 8 years since the camp closed. And it will be 3 years since we have been carrying this new vision. And it's been beautiful. Dozens of young adults are being mentored now at the station. It is a free mentorship. Nobody has to pay to get mentored. And there's multiple nonprofits that we get to come alongside and help them so they become sustainable in ministry and they don't give up on the vision they're carrying already. And we get to run camps this summer, don't we, Michelle? And we increase the number of camps. We're doing 4, maybe 5 weeks of summer camps this summer. So no, we don't have the fullness of the vision God dropped in my heart and Pete's heart yet from 3 years ago. But each step of the way, he's teaching us a little bit more and he's providing a little bit more. And it's so beautiful to watch it unfold. So don't give up. Don't give up on the vision in your heart. I promise God will lead you and he will provide all you need to. Yeah.
Any last words, Pete?
You know, what I was thinking about is this, I think we said it in the last episode, and that is you can serve somebody else's vision as well. And so there's no really reason why you have to sit there and wait.
Right.
There's plenty of ministries, there's plenty of nonprofits that I'm sure that are serving that. Sometimes we think, well, but it's not my exact vision. That's okay. Take a step. Who knows what you're going to learn? Mm-hmm. And there's no reason just to sit there and feel like I can't do anything. There's always, I think God will always provide and show you a door to where your heart is burning and to allow you to take a step.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's a business, or there's always something to get equipped and educated with and gain wisdom as we're carrying vision. So there's always something we can do to take steps forward. I promise you're not stuck. You are not stuck. Yeah. So we hope we leave you with hope today for the vision you're carrying. And be sure to message us if you have any questions. We'd love to pray for you too. So you can send us a DM. And anything else?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you for joining us, and thank you both for sharing about your vision in your lives.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much. We're excited to bring the next person on for episode 3 of season 3, Vision Carriers. So stay tuned for our next episode that will come out next month. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for joining us for the Station Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Station Corp, or follow us on Instagram at The Station Corp and at The Station Camp. If you'd like to email us, our email is info@thestationcorp.com.